GEO versus SEO. Is it the same thing? I always ask this question to different SEOs and marketers. And today I'm joined with Ben from AISO, and he has a lot of data and evidence related to artificial intelligence and large language models. So Ben, let's jump straight in. Is GEO just SEO? And have you got any evidence to back this point of view up?
Yeah, so that's the big question. Lots of debate on this. So I'll say a short answer, and then we can maybe dive a little bit deeper on some aspects. The first answer to the question, and we covered that in the first part of this series, is that you first want to know if people are asking the same thing to AI than to Google, because if they're asking completely different things, even if the techniques to rank are the same, you're still aiming for a different target. And we talked a little bit about how the questions are, in AI are different from the Google. To summarize, they are much more informational, much more specific, and sometimes the conversation is the funnel, the entire funnel going through different steps. Now, once you know that, there's still a question on, okay, but maybe the techniques are the same. So maybe the queries are a little bit more informational, but if I use my SEO tools, all the techniques to create to be high in the ranking, then I just aim for that query, and then I will appear in AI. And the short answer to this is that it's actually 80% true. So the techniques are really similar, but what you really want to make sure is that you're aiming for the right target. And this is how we essentially discovered, and the whole world of SEO has discovered, the concept of query fan out. Where essentially all AI, and Gemini, ChatGPT, all of them, when you send a question, very often the AI will summarize the question and send this as a web search to see what are the most recent results for that web search. So I'd say that yes, GEO is SEO, but you want to aim at those web searches, which are called the query fan out, and you want to be visible in those as a search, as a result for this background web search, aka query fan out. Little more nuance to it, and I'll let you then tell me which direction you want to go. But little more nuance is that the ranking, the absolute ranking, okay, like being number one, is much less important for AI, because it's gonna take the top 30 up to top 50 results for those query fan outs. And then depending on how present you are, okay, you're more likely to be in the answer. So first of all, you don't need to be number one, okay? If your top 10 it's fine, okay, it's more than enough. And also there's a premium, there's a bonus if you appear multiple times in this top 30, okay? So for instance, if you're half, if you're not in the top 10, but you own all the position from top 20 to top 30, you're actually very likely to be in the answer, even though you're nowhere to be seen in the traditional world of SEO.
So, right, let me stop you there then, because in one of the sayings you said, so GEO and SEO, they're almost the same thing, right? But I want to throw a caveat into this, because generally speaking, within SEO, if you're not ranking top 5, you're not getting any clicks, you're not being cited, like you don't have that discovery, pretty much is the top 5 results. But now you're telling me I could be ranked in position 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Now I'm getting in the AI overview, now I'm being cited more than position 1 result, which makes it very different to SEO and organic rankings. Plus you're telling me that with regards to GEO, with the previous episode, the searches are a lot different. They're not short little 3 and 4 word kind of searches. Now they're more long tail, multi kind of query type questions. So I'm hearing that actually GEO and SEO is actually very different, in my opinion, from what you're telling me. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think it's different, but then if you aim for different queries and you aim for the fan out, for instance, then how to appear in the rankings for the fan out, even though you may not need to be number one, But how to appear there, then it's going to be using all the tools of the world of SEO. So it's going to be creating content, it's going to be making sure your page is easy to crawl, doesn't spend too much budget, it's going to be having enough authority that you're considered trustworthy by Google, using backlinks. So all of these techniques still apply, but they just apply to slightly different targets.
So there's slight different nuances then, but the same SEO practices, if you're going after all the query fan out terms, is the same. It's still semantic SEO, semantic triples to get you those kind of answers. But anyone who's listening to this, how do you personally go and find the query fan out queries on ChatGPT and on Gemini? Is there a tool that you're using, or are you going in the code of ChatGPT and stuff like that to find out what those queries are? I know there's different people that are using different tools.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe to answer how we made all these experiments to find if it's top 30 or 50, for instance, I should explain a bit how we generated the fan out. And yeah, there are different tools, there's different ways, starting from the most manual to how we do it. The most manual is to look into, you open the session, you ask a question to Gemini or ChatGPT, you go into the network request, you find where it is, there's a specific JSON, and you can find the fan out there. After that, there are some Chrome extensions, some free tools, free Chrome extensions that are working fine. Now, the issue we had is that we wanted to generate not just like the fan outs for one question, we wanted to generate like thousands of them. And so we basically built a tool for ourselves at the beginning, and then we basically added it to our app. And the difference is essentially that with our tool, you can just generate like, 10, 20, hundreds of prompts. I mean, you can put like as many prompts as you want, and then you get all the fan out for those. And then it's also a little bit easier for you because you see like some, you're going to see, for instance, okay, out of all the prompts that you're interested in, these are, for instance, the most common brands that appear. It might be a competitor, or this is the most common source that appears, right? If you want to do a bit of digital PR, you want to understand what are the sources that are dominating the fan out. And you can have like a high-level overview for many prompts and many fan outs instead of just doing one by one. So that's how we generated them.
So if I'm inputting multiple prompts, for anyone who's watching this and they don't know what your tool is, what is the tool called, and how can they go and import 50 different prompts to get 100 different query fan out stuff that they then should be optimizing for? What is the tool called?
Yeah, the tool is called AISO, AISO, and the website is getiso.com. So GETAISO.com. And there is a free trial. So you have like 3 credits, I think. And that's one feature. There's a bunch of other features, but that's one feature called fan out. And 1 credit gives you access to, I think, 20 prompts. So you can try, 60 prompts, I think, if you want in total. And for each of them, you're gonna have, for ChatGPT, about 2 query fan out on average, sometimes 3, usually 2. And Gemini generates a lot more fan outs, so you can generate a lot more for that model. But you can try for free, and then if you want to add more prompt, you can just buy credit, and you can put the prompts you're interested in, the one you think are the relevant ones. But you can also use another feature of the app to see what might be the real prompt that people are asking about you, which is also helpful.
Yeah, so anyone who's listening to this with regards to the query fan out, you touched upon there where we had somebody else who was on that spoke about the query fan out, and they said that generally speaking on ChatGPT on average, they found that the average on ChatGPT was 3 query fan outs, and the average on Gemini was 10. Why do you think it is that Gemini does a lot more fan out queries than ChatGPT? Do you think someone previously answered it that it's a lot cheaper for Gemini because obviously they can use the cache and stuff like that of Google? Do you think it is that, or do you think that they're just looking to get more data? Like, why do you think one does so much more fan out than the other?
Yeah, I think that's a simple. In our analysis, it was on average 2 actually for Gemini, and 10. I agree, it's about this for no, 2 for ChatGPT and about 10 for Gemini. And yeah, I think the easy answer is that ChatGPT needs to pay for each of the fan out search, right? So there's been an evolution. At the beginning, they were using Bing, then it looked like they were using Google, and now maybe they use SERP API, which really is scraping Google. So it's Google, but they have to pay for it. And so they need to pay for it, right? And Google has probably access to much cheaper searches. That's my impression. That it's just much cheaper for Google, so they do more of it.
Yeah, so anyone who's watching this then with regards to the evidence-based view, is there anything that they should be doing to try to optimize for query fan out? So obviously, let's just use Gemini. Someone goes and puts a prompt in and Gemini comes back with 10 different query fan outs. Should they be like literally creating them as subheadings, new pages? What should they try to literally write? Because sometimes on the query fan out, there's contradictory type fan outs like, is your brand a scam? Your brand complaints, and all those type of terms. Should you still be trying to own that and framing that messaging to make certain that you're the one that's answering that? What would you give to anyone on the contradictory like fan out terms that's coming back?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and there's, as always with the SEO, it's about trade-off and how much how much budget you want to put and where do you want to be in the funnel, in terms of return on investment. So you have if you look at a typical fan out. So let's say the user is entering. I'm preparing for a trip to New York. I'd like to eat pepperoni pizza. But I hate spicy food. Is there any restaurant in New York with, not too spicy pepperoni? So that's actually a typical thing that can actually a realistic query for AI. Then ChatGPT or Gemini is going to take the question and they're going to summarize it to something like pepperoni not spicy in New York 2026. Okay. Then you might have another fan out which might be best pepperoni, best restaurants, with a repetition of the word best. The idea of this, is basically given the way essentially the information is used by the AI. If you repeat a specific word, you put more weight into this word. So you're more likely that the AI is gonna consider that attribute. So you might have like best pepperoni, best restaurant, allergic conscious New York. So that might be true, and then for Gemini you might have like more variation around those, with other aspects. And the first thing you want to think about is, okay, what are all the different ways you have leverage on this? So you look at the Google search results for those fan outs. You should take the most recent one, top 30. I think it's a safe bet. You can go all the way to 50, but you should start, I think, with 30. And then you want to see what's in there already, right? And you're gonna have really 3 kinds of website usually. You're gonna have like brands, so you might be there, or your competitors might be there. That happens. We saw that for many users. Then you're gonna have media, so you're gonna have for sure an article about the top 10 pizza in New York City, in some in a famous sort of lifestyle paper. So you're gonna have like media like this. And you're gonna have, let's say, social media. Okay, you're gonna have like a Reddit thread on the best pepperoni pizza. And so it's very, very likely. So then you have those 3 options, and you have a trade-off in each of them in terms of effort and reward. So if you see your website, well, that's the lowest effort. You're already there, and maybe that's fine. You have nothing to do, or maybe you just want to make sure that you're addressing the specific query a little bit more, right? That's it. You make one edit to your page. So lowest effort, decent reward. Now, if you go into the media, into the paid media, so like the listicles, like the top 10 pizza, here it's higher cost because those things are not cheap to be featured in it's digital PR, but it's likely that this specific media has not just one presence in the fan out, but maybe like 2 or 3 articles. That's usually how it happens. And so then you basically multiply your likelihood to be picked up by 2 or 3 if they have 2 or 3 mentions. It's almost as simple as that. So it's much, the reward is 2-3 times higher. And then if you go into social media, there it depends, okay, if it's a LinkedIn article, it's cheap and low risk. If it's a Reddit thread, it's high risk, right? Because if you go on there and say, hey, the person is asking about best pizza, you say, hey, this pizza is best, and you're picked up as someone, you notice, by the other Redditors as someone who works for that company, you're gonna have like a pushback, right? The Redditors are gonna say they're very mean on this platform on Reddit, right? They're very rude. They're gonna tell you, hey, it's obvious you work for that company, get away from here. And AI is sensitive to this. So the Gemini and ChatGPT are gonna notice that you're trying to, that you have like dubious practice, slightly, suspicious practice, and this might come up in the answer when you're mentioned. So it's basically a double-edged sword, right? Those platforms. So I'd advise not to do it. We will say, a bad ready strategy is worse than no ready strategy. So don't go there if you're not ready to play the long game, spend 12 months on this, do it properly. If you're not ready to do this, just don't even bother. All right, it's not. So I think that's kind of how you can think about it, and depending on your budget and what you expect in terms of impact, you should aim for one of those channels.
Yeah. So I've got a few more questions on query fan out, which is obviously related to AI SEO, LLM SEO, or GEO, or whatever you want to call it. Somebody on a previous episode told me that with regards to, and they said they had data on this, with regards to the query fan out, they broke the query fan out down into 6 dimensions, is the way that they called it, or 6 categories. And the 6 categories of what they said was entity query fan out, attribute query fan out, freshness query fan out, consensus query fan out, reputation query fan out, and contradictory query fan out. So just to explain this for anyone who's listening to this, entity is about the brand, attribute is about like the services that the brand might offer, freshness of testimonials, freshness of case studies, and so on and so on. Consensus, how many times are you being repeated, being mentioned? So not just ranking in position number 1, have you got multiple listings in the top 50? Reputation comes back down to case studies, awards, testimonials, reviews, and stuff like that. Contradictory, is there any complaints or negative reviews or lawsuits against the company and stuff like that? And they said that every time it always fitted in those 6 dimensions. 1, have you ever heard that? And 2, do you agree, or is there any more categorization that you find with the query fan out?
Yeah, so similar categories, maybe not exactly those. And maybe it's covered by this description, but there's one thing. There's one thing that often appears, which is, and people who've looked at those have probably seen this. It's like taking the request that's been done, like the prompt, summarizing it, and then adding a location and a date. So if I'm looking for best pepperoni pizza in New York, I'm already giving like the location, but I might just ask like best pepperoni pizza, and for both ChatGPT and Gemini, whenever you send a prompt, the location where you are is added to the prompt by default. Okay, there's actually no way to take this out. It's not a setting. It's just the way the prompt is sent. So whatever your prompt is, the location is added to it based on your IP address. So often the fan out is going to be, if I just say best pepperoni pizza, it's going to say best pepperoni pizza, New York, and then date. Then some other fan out are not going to have the date. And those, the ones that are, you can say time dependent fan out, like this is a category that we had, and maybe it's related to the category of freshness that you had. But it's basically just a way for the AI to look at like the most recent results, right? And to see what's like currently the best in this category. So of course that applies to SEO, but if you can make sure that your key content is updated as to the latest year, it's a good idea, because you're gonna be more likely to feature in this time dependent or freshness fan out. So that's a quick win, and it's a very good idea to do this. Assuming of course that you rank for that one in Google. And the other category, and I think this might be related to the entity or the attribute, maybe one that you described, is really like this repetition of words in the fan out. So you're going to say like best pepperoni pizza, and it's going to say, I'm pushing it. It's never going to be that obvious, but it's going to be like best, pepperoni, 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 and those. The idea is, if you look at the space of all the text that the AI has access to, and that includes like the training data in addition to the web searches, by the way, because you want to be in the fan out, but you're also going to look at the training data, right? And this, we're not going into it because it's much harder to influence. But there is, we have to be aware that it exists. So you have the training data, which is kind of static, and then you have the live search, which is done, on the fly. And when they say best, they basically want to take all this information and put more weight on what's, likely to describe the best option, right? So they want to put more weight into it. It could be, that you ask, I have like celiac allergy or sensitivity, and it's super important for me, right? Maybe even you said in your settings that this is something that the LLM should really pay attention to. And we'll talk in the next episode about personalization. But if you talk about this and you say it's very important, the LLM might repeat like 5 times celiac because it's going to overweight that point. So in terms of how you want to address this, I think is that as a business, if you have an edge, if you have something you're very good at and you're differentiated, which usually is the case, you want to make sure that it's super clear, so that when a query is heavily weighted for that specific feature, it's obvious to the LLM that this is what you're about. So you really want to kind of double down and basically just deprioritize all the generic description on your website, and really overweight and put at the top and put in the most popular articles, and especially those that are ranking for the fan out. Put like those things where you differentiate, because you're much more likely to be picked up for those weighted query. So those at the moment are my kind of, I did see categories, like you said, for instance, you might have like reviews in the fan out if it's about perception. You might have specific brands that are mentioned, so it's a branded search effectively, even if you didn't ask for any brand. I think you can go into this, and it really depends on how ChatGPT, because essentially they take the query, the prompt, then there's a little mini LLM, right, that looks at this query and generates the fan out. And depending on what this mini LLM has in this training data, is going to trigger a branded search or a time search, etc. I think I would focus on the first two, like the time dependent one and your differentiating feature, because those are the ones you're most likely to have an impact on. The other ones where it's like a branded search, things like this, you might have an impact on it, but I think it's much more difficult. So that would be my kind of approach for this.
So a follow-on question, consensus. You've mentioned that consensus is really important, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say someone does the query fan out, and I've got position 1 rankings, so I'm ranking position number 1, but my brand is not being repeated anywhere else, but I'm ranking position number 1, and somebody else's brand is ranking in position 21, 22 and 23. So they're ranking, they've got 3 spots in the top 30, but they're only on page 3 in position 21, 22 and 23. I'm ranking in position number 1, but I've only got 1. In your opinion, what would be more likely to be cited, the one that's ranking in position number 1 but only got 1 mention, or the one ranking in position number 21, 22 and 23 with 3 kind of mentions? Which one's more likely to get cited in the AI overview?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we didn't run lots of tests on this, but our anecdotal impression is that the number of mention is more important than where you rank. So the person who's ranking multiple times, because as you know, if I send one query, if I send the same query like 1,000 times, and we'll talk about this in personalization, the answer is going to be slightly different. So the way you can look at it, and Rand Fishkin came up with this concept of like lottery, like next token lottery, which is quite kind of pejorative in his mind, but in a way it has like it's partly how it works. But if you look at, to simplify it, if you look at like the 30 results in the fan out, it's a little bit of a lottery which one it's going to take out of those, okay? And you don't have a bigger weight if you're number one. You might have a bigger weight if, like, semantically you're closer to the query. So you're answering something that's much more closer. The snippets say as like an important keyword, especially one of the ones that is repeated in the fan art, right? For instance, that's a better, that's going to increase your weight. But if you're number one or number 11, you still have one shot out of 30. And if you're like 10 times out of 30, well, you've got 10 out of 30. So you got like 30% or 33% chance now. So that's our anecdotal observation.
Yeah, and then one last question with regards to chunking or passages of content and stuff like that. So someone was telling me where when they get the query fan out, that because of the cost element to open up the page and the time constraints to open up all the pages, that a lot of the time they actually don't even open up the pages. What they'll just do is they'll just use the SERP, so the search engine results page, and get the meta title and the meta description. And a lot of the time the meta description itself might not be used. It might pull in a passage of content as part of the meta description. So like Google would choose its own meta description, so to speak. And without opening up the page, they'll get the top 30 results. If they've got enough answers within them top 30 results and a consensus, so let's say one brand's being mentioned 5 times within that, they've got enough information. They don't open up any of the pages. They're just using the meta titles and the descriptions. How true is that? Or do they ever open up the pages and get content from what's on the page that might not be in the search engine results page?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. And we've done a lot of research on this, but for clients, not something we publish, but I'm hoping to publish one thing. And we looked at this in the context of YouTube content, for instance. And the question that is like analogous to what you said is AI watching the video, or are they just getting some kind of summary of it, right? And what is the summary? And here it's interesting that I can give you a couple of pointers. First of all, there's a difference between ChatGPT and Gemini. So similarly to why Gemini does 10 query fan out compared to 2 for ChatGPT, Gemini also looks much more in detail into the actual content of the page than ChatGPT. Many cases, very often what ChatGPT does, and also there's some kind of differences if it's thinking or not, etc. But to put it simply, very often what ChatGPT does is giving you the impression that it read the page without doing it. Okay, that's like 99% of the cases. And so if, as you say, it's going to look at the snippets, like just the search results without opening the page, and there's enough information in there, it's going to tell you in the answer. It's not going to tell you you only looked at the summary. It's going to tell you based on this page. So it's going to look like it opened the page, but really it's only going to look at the search results. As for ChatGPT, Gemini, it's a little bit more subtle because they actually read the entire thing, and so it might actually be content in there. But they also try to give you the answer as fast as possible. So sometimes they just stop at the search results. Sometimes they go a little bit deeper into it. This depends on the query and how specific, like how much they need to get information. But for ChatGPT, they make it look like they open pages, but they almost never do.
Yeah, that's crazy. So anyone who's watching this, obviously I've picked Ben's brain with regards to GEO versus SEO. Is it the same thing? Is there different nuances? Make sure you check out the link in the description where on a previous episode we talk about how searches are very different when people are doing it in AI search and the large language models like Grok, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude or Gemini. In the next episode, we're talking about the personalization of LLMs. He touched on it there before about how you can be using the exact same question on the exact same machine and get different answers, but also from one person to the next, you can get different answers as well because of the history. You could be using different LLMs and stuff like that. So make sure you check out the links in the description.